Hi, y'all, and welcome to the Lies We Love podcast. I'm Ashley, and I'm here with my three sisters. And today we are going to be talking about shame and guilt. Just as a quick disclaimer, we are not professionals. We are just here talking about our personal experiences and just coming together, hoping that you find something helpful.
And this could be triggering for you, so be in a safe place. We don't really know if anything we say could be triggering, but just letting you know it could be triggering. And the content that we're using, it could be too mature for a younger audience. So please be mindful of that.
Why do all of y'all say mature? It's mature.
No, it's tomato.
It's mature.
It's like you all, but you say y'all.
Nobody says you all.
I think some people
This
do.
is a great segue into guilt and shame. Ashley,
Also a great segue into the fact that we're not professionals, and we need to mention that as well.
She did.
Yeah, she did.
Okay, so
And
today,
I have ADD.
so
Just letting everybody
so
else know.
today's topic is guilt and shame. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, this is an interesting topic. It's covered by a lot of people, and today we're going to cover it. So it hasn't been covered by us yet until today. So here we go.
Do you guys think that guilt and shame are confused as maybe the same thing by people?
Yes.
Yes, and I think it's because it's the person who is trying to, like, I think of a parent who is kind of just like berating their kid, and they're causing shame, but they're also giving mixed feelings of you should feel guilty for this.
So the definition of guilt is a feeling that you have done something wrong, perceived that you have done something wrong, whereas shame is a feeling that your whole self is wrong, and it may not be related to a specific behavior or event.
I've always thought of shame as going deeper than guilt. Like, guilt is something that naturally happens if you accidentally say something offensive and, you feel guilty because you said that thing that was offensive, versus feeling shameful about, like, the core of who you are is kind of how I view the two differently.
Yeah, when I hear shame, I immediately go back to DNA structure. Like it's encoded in your DNA based on the things that you were brought up in, the experiences that you lived, traumas that were passed down to you by your family. Like it's just embedded. It's encoded inside of you.
Yeah, I think shame is like taught. Like it's taught to you. That's kind of how I think about it, because you're not born with shame, and you're not born guilty either, but I think that shame is something that is taught to you, like about who you are as an individual.
But
do y'all think that, or do y'all think something different?
Well, I think
because we were taught to be ashamed of not just our bodies, but kind of who we were as individuals. We were taught that we really weren't our own individuals as well, and that we needed, a man, or we needed, whatever. We were being, we were put to shame because we were told that we didn't have an education, and we would never go to college. We would never graduate high school. So I feel like it's almost like a core belief that gets taught to you from whoever it is that's raising you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, shame can also come from a feeling of guilt as well. It's not the same thing, but think about times where, like, you gave the instance of saying something wrong, and you felt shame for it. Well, then you're also going to feel guilt for it if you feel like you did the wrong thing.
I think you can feel guilty, though, and not feel shameful, because when you feel shameful, you're taking that to your core of like who you are, versus guilt is, I know I said something offensive to Brooke and I feel guilty because I did something wrong, versus, so, okay, when you feel guilty, the way that I look at this is that when you're guilty, it's like I did something wrong versus shame, which is saying I am something wrong. That's kind of how I view the two differently.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
I know for myself, my therapist told me if you're having a hard time figuring out whether it is shame or guilt, you'll know that the indicators of shame are combated, and the outward cause is going to be secrecy and silence, and it's all out of a controlled behavior.
Yeah.
So if you feel the need to be secret about, like, hold something as a secret or be silent about it, that's usually shame versus guilt.
What do you guys, or I guess, what is your reaction when you're in the middle of experiencing shame?
Self-loathing.
Because I have very physical reactions, which is hilarious because I'm not a physical person at all. I have very physical reactions to shame. I blush. I get really, really embarrassed. I start sweating, and my pulse starts racing. It's very interesting. It's a very specific response that I've been able to identify. I was just curious if you guys had reactions like that when you're in the middle of it.
I avoid eye contact with the person who I feel is either making me feel shamed or I feel shamed in their presence. I'll avoid eye contact. I might have like my body demeanor like instead of like, I mean, I don't really sit upright all the time, but I'll definitely like, sink your shoulders in, maybe start like playing with something, like just fidgeting, and trying to as much like almost dissociate from the situation. And that's how I have reacted.
I get really negative, or I have really negative self-talk
Oh yeah,
in my head, like immediately.
Yeah.
For me, I just don't even show up to play. Like I don't even put myself in the situation to feel.
Like you just shut down?
More so like I know my triggers and I know what is shameful to me. Therefore, in private, like, okay, with dyslexia, that's something for me that was very shameful for a long time. So I had to work extra hard in private, and I would use green highlighters, write things out, and I would do all the homework in private so no one would ever know in public. But I would never put myself in those positions to feel shame.
So,
which is disassociation. It's a form of it.
Here's a really good example. Growing up, or even if you were an adult, what is the number one most shameful moment for y'all? Like if you had to think of something that was the most shameful, like the most shameful that you have ever felt about yourself.
That's a lot for me. Like,
yeah.
I don't
And it
even
might be
know.
more than one instance.
Oh, it would definitely be more than one instance.
I guess for me, it would definitely be feeling, and maybe y'all feel this too, because I mean, we were all given up on, but feeling.
Sorry.
our producer's cell phone just went off. So we're just all having a
No,
good
it's
laugh.
just the idea of like we were kids, but we had parents that
Yeah.
gave up on us from a very young
I-
age.
I
It
would-
just sounds weird to me.
Yeah. I mean, I would say the most shameful that I have felt is just not being wanted, and not understanding why that was, not understanding that it had nothing to do with me, just like it had nothing to do with y'all. It had everything to do with, the parents. It had everything to do with, the parents that we had. So I think that, and then I would also say, being constantly told that you were not good enough, and those things being reinforced by our parents.
I had a moment of shame yesterday. I went to Aaron's house and
You did?
yes.
When?
Yesterday, Aaron.
No, I know you went to my house, but when? What shameful thing happened?
It didn't click till just now. We were sitting on your couches and you were complaining about how you had put up pictures and stuff and you didn't like them. But there was one picture and it was of Rachel, Aaron, and I in front of a house that we lived in.
You know that the only good picture that we have of us three
We're all
when we were
wearing
younger?
nautical-looking, dark navy, sailor-looking dresses in front of the elephant ears from the bent tree on Elm Street.
Oh, wow. That was a long time ago. Yes.
I have that hung up.
So she has that hung up,
Uh-huh.
and I was just staring at it, and I felt immense shame. But I didn't connect it to shame. There was just, Erin was saying, "Hey, you want to take the picture?" And I said no, and she was like, "Why? You look sad." And I was like, "Because I think that was one of the first moments for me that I don't. What did I say, Erin?
Well, you said a few things. You said that those outfits that we were all wearing, they weren't even ours, that they were someone from the church.
Okay, so I'm looking at the picture, and the Brooke in the picture is confident, her head is tilted, and she feels absolutely beautiful. And
Rachel and Brooke were very photogenic in that picture.
like
it was very
there
cute.
was something I remember sitting down taking that picture, but there was a family in the church that their business, the husband and wife were photographers, and these dresses were borrowed from their 3 daughters. And I felt so happy that we had these new dresses, and then after the photo shoot we had to give them back. They weren't even ours, but I didn't know that, and the shame of that, like, we can't even get pretty dresses. Like, yeah.
So, poverty. Being
Well,
ashamed about poverty.
Yeah.
Well, even Brooke said Cindy, she wasn't even there for that photo shoot. She went back in the house.
She went inside.
And so it seemed like there was a lot of painful
You
memories.
guys remember so much more than I do.
Well, I don't, but she does.
But I remember looking at Dad and just almost posing for him, like, I'm beautiful for you. Like, and I felt like a little princess. And you can tell in the photo, because the photo, I look confident, happy, like something had been provided. And then after that photo shoot, we went back to a life of, oh, we don't really own anything nice. We have to give these dresses back.
I do want to say something real quick. This is kind of steering off of this topic, but Rachel, you said something earlier before Ashley started talking about how our parents gave up on us at an early age. I don't think they ever had us to give up. Like, does that make sense? Like, they never, I don't think they had dreams for us.
Sure.
They didn't have anything to
Sure.
give up on.
That makes
we
sense.
just existed.
Yeah.
And we were just like part of their life. Does that make sense?
Yes, there was no intentionality about anything.
Yeah, like, so it's like of course there were no dreams to be fed or anything like that, because
True.
they didn't have any for us.
True. Okay.
So I thought about what you just said, and I was like, I don't think we were ever something that they had intentions for,
So
like good intentions for.
so
I mean,
sad.
it maybe, I don't know. It's confusing. Anyways,
I'll never understand how you're okay with living your life that way. It's so unhappy and miserable.
it's a lot of trauma that you just don't address.
I mean, yeah, we're traumatized. We're trying to get out of it, but we make conscious efforts to have a better life and do fun things. I don't understand how you live your whole life just being okay with that kind of a mediocre existence. Or not even mediocre, sub-mediocre. You know what I mean?
I think that was a lie from the church, though, because a lot of people, it was like, you've got to
You're
be
just
humble.
waiting for the rapture.
Yeah.
Oh, dear God.
I mean, that's one aspect of it, but people, it was very much ingrained that God is towards the poor, and it's more humble to not have a lot, and you can't reach for things, and this whole doctrine was kind of twisted, and it was almost like you have what you have and you're not supposed to ask for more, give to others, ignore yourself, and oh, but God loves you.
I don't know if it was like that. I think that that's a different topic, but I think it was more. It was, and this is what I truly believe that spiritual abuse can be, why it can be so detrimental, is the teachings of God, or how he rescued us, how he, all of this other stuff. There was that hidden agenda of just building shame into that story from at least our parents.
Yeah.
And if you can attack, and this is, I think, where like shame can be multifaceted. If you can attack shame for how you are in your physical body, if you can, invoke shame for your physical body, your spiritual aspect, and use God in that,
Yeah.
then who are you? You are destined. I mean, anyone can heal, but you are destined to live a life as an adult feeling depression, anxiety, shame about your very existence. And what are you supposed to do with that? Like, does that, I don't know. That's how I feel like spiritual abuse also just makes
It goes
shame
hand in hand.
It does, and I think that so many people that we grew up with, and ourselves, myself included, it's like, okay, we were taught to have shame for all these things, and that God is just, he's just so, he just doesn't like you, but he has to like you and love you because he died on the cross for you, and he can't do that all in vain. So he's just gonna like save your pitiful soul, and. Does that, I don't know. For me, that computes a lot.
Absolutely.
Rachel, what's an example for you of shame and guilt, and Aaron as well? Because I don't think both of y'all answered that.
Ugh. I can think of like many different times in my life where that feeling of shame really molded my perception of who I was. Like I talked about when I got that haircut, the bowl haircut that was really popular back then for some girls, or it was a popular look. And Robert looked at me and he said, "You look like a boy," shook his head and just walked off. Like that was a time where I felt ashamed of who I was, of my body. I was not pretty. Something could happen physically to my body and it would all go downhill from there. And I would not be seen in the light that I believed I was supposed to be seen in.
I went and spent the night at a friend's house one time. And when Robert picked me up, we were driving back home, and and I said something to the effect of, "I had a good time," and he said, "Well, good, because it's going to be the last time."
How old were you?
I have no idea, but I went through a lot of this crap in therapy. But I asked why, and he was like, "Well, the father of the person that I spent the night with said that you ate all the sugar in the house, so you're not going to be going back there anytime soon."
At like what kind of age frame was?
I think I was maybe like 10 or 11 or something. And I just remember feeling so embarrassed about my complete existence. And yeah. That and being poor is definitely a big trigger. And being uneducated, I'm always afraid that I'm going to appear like a toothless Okie when I'm talking in front of people. And I own it now, and I'm a lot more comfortable with talking about it now. But for a long time, it was very, it was a very shameful thing to admit, that I didn't have an education, especially when I wanted one so badly. Yeah.
When I was trying to pass my GED, I had taken it twice and I could not pass the math and the science portion. And we were doing an Easter pageant, which is what our church did. I remember exactly where I was. And I got the letter that, and my dad, Robert, had brought it. Yeah, for our listeners, some of us refer to our dad as Dad and others are calling him Robert now. So Robert gave me the letter and I opened it, and he made such a big fuss about me finally passing it on the third time. But the time before that, the second letter that had come, I started crying, and he said, if you speak, and I was crying because I didn't pass. It was the math and the science that were stumping me. And Robert said, if you studied as much as you cried, you would have passed it.
Jesus Christ.
So in the moment when I get the letter saying that I
I'm laughing. This is terrible.
In the moment now at the Easter pageant, when he gives me that letter and I open it and he makes such a big deal about me passing, I was confused. I was like, what? You already told me I wasn't, like,
it's like conditional
my
love.
My goodness,
and
if I could just go back in time, I feel like, and just I have all of these comebacks, I would definitely just use every. I would have been like, well, if you could, let's see, I don't know, if you could, spin all of your, just your negativity and your worry and actually work, then maybe we would have money.
So
how about that?
How about maybe the fact that you can't pass a GED is an indication that I've failed as a parent.
Yeah. So
there
you go.
So what is something shameful that y'all are trying to still work through today?
I'm not going to talk about that.
I don't know why you keep hitting us with these questions
Because
that
it's
are exposing
important.
us.
It's important.
Nah, it's
This
not.
whole podcast is exposing our lives.
Ironically, I still deal with weight issues, and a lot of that goes back to, Dad was pretty much a bully. He said other things and did other things about my weight that just, that's one of the big issues.
I was thinking about this yesterday, and Rachel, and you looking back, for the things that I can remember, you didn't really get attention from either of our parents. And the form of attention that you did get, it was negativity on your body.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember
You
all
would
of
be
these
so
things.
pretty if you would just diet more. Things like that. You have such a pretty face. If you would just do this, so that
And
your
then-
body would be along with it.
And then they would complain about when you did wear makeup, how much makeup you wore.
Exactly. Why are you wearing all that war paint?
Yeah.
Are you trying to attract somebody?
So it was
Who are you wearing that for?
I think out of all of us, I mean, we were each, I think you had it the worst in that realm. Looking back, I really do believe that you had it the worst in that aspect.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That breaks my heart for you.
I know. It's awful. I hate that they treated you that way. All of y'all that way.
Did Cindy ever tell you guys that if your breasts were starting to come in, it meant that you were sexually active?
Well, mine never came in.
She
so.
always said weird, creepy.
Still waiting for that talk. Eh?
She always said weird and creepy stuff like that.
It was very, I felt so much shame in that, almost a fear, because I wasn't sexually active when she said that, but it was just so off the wall, crazy talk.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I
guys,
would say, as far as something that is shameful with me today, even though I went to school and stuff like that, there are still things that I feel like I didn't really focus on too much in school that I probably still struggle with today, like geography.
You struggle in
Noted
geography?
and
Yes.
noted. Noted and noted. We won't tease you anymore about that.
No, I'm not like well, okay. I mean, yeah. I don't know. It's things like that, like really simple things that I feel like I kind of missed in school that wasn't a requirement for like college, because you kind of reach these points where you pass like elementary stuff and you don't go back to the elementary stuff, and you may use some of that stuff in your future education, but it's not like a daily like requirement. So I mean, I'm not it's just things like that, and I would say like my body and stuff like that, and just kind of what we grew up being told about our body are still kind of
See, I was
shameful
definitely
things.
the kid that grew up watching Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, so my geography skills are pretty
I'm
on
happy for
point.
you.
I know, right?
But you
That
know
was
what?
just an example. I mean, it was just the first thing I thought of.
Gotcha.
But you know what's interesting is the thing about shame is shame tends to tell you I'm the only one dealing with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say your nephew struggles with geography too. Geography is something that you either have an interest in it or you don't. You want to know
Yeah.
it or you don't.
Yeah.
It's interesting to people or it isn't. You're not the only one that struggles with identifying Arkansas on a map,
Right.
kind of a thing. You're not the only one, but that's what shame does, is it kind of isolates you and says you're the only one
Yeah.
in the world that doesn't know
I do have
where
to
this is, and that's not true. It's simply not true.
I do have to say, if you scroll TikTok, I feel so much better about my education because the people that will stop you on the side of the road. How many states make up the United States of America? And they're like 3. But I feel so good about myself when I hear these kids who go to a public education giving off answers that make no sense. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But you're not the only one, is what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
No, I agree.
And these issues, I'm not the only one that deals with the issues that I deal with. There's lots of other people. And there's a lot of people that have had it worse than us.
I agree.
There are people, yeah.
How
We have the privilege of being Caucasian. We don't have, we've had hard experiences, but we haven't had it as hard as other people. And that's what I mean to say.
how do we break shame and guilt?
The antidote to shame and
Yes.
guilt is empathy.
Empathy towards yourself or others or both?
Both.
Oh,
The
okay.
empathy towards yourself, because guilt can be constrictive and shame is destructive. And when someone comes to you and you can recognize that shame, empathy is what cuts through that shame.
I have
What?
wait, yeah.
I don't know about that.
That's what
I'm trying to
the
think.
research says.
I
Go ahead. Sorry.
was just going to say I have two opinions. One is if you personally, if you're listening to this and including for us, if you have shame, I think there's 3 key things you need to do.
3, huh?
3.
Ashley,
You ready
tell
for
us about
these?
those 3 things.
All right, let's go. Number 1, you need to forgive yourself. No, hold on. That's not the first step. The first step,
Oh my gosh.
no, the first step is you need to identify what makes you ashamed. I'm just going to say ashamed because, again, I do believe guilty is kind of, you don't just walk around feeling guilty every single day of your life. That's shame. If it's your core, like who you believe yourself to be, is just a shame person. So I would say number 1, you have to identify and get down to the core belief of why you feel that shame. So first is to identify it. Number 2, you need to forgive yourself. Because if you do not forgive yourself for whatever you feel ashamed about, because when you take on shame, you are attaching that to your being. You're attaching that to who you are as an individual. And when you do that, without even thinking about it, you're associating that with who you are. What you feel ashamed about, you're attaching that to who you are, and you immediately think horrible about yourself. Or think, I'm not this enough, I'm not that enough. And then the third thing Was there a third thing?
Yes,
You said there was.
I know I said there was a third thing, but I think that going back to the second part, it's like a 2-part one. There's a voice that's attached to the shame, and you have to be able to listen to it.
Well, I think what it comes down to is you have to practice mindfulness of what is causing the shame. You have to say, okay, well, what in this moment, okay, I feel ashamed about something. Okay, what do I feel ashamed about? Okay, well, when this person did this, I immediately felt shame, because shame isn't always invoked by another person. You can feel shame by no one doing anything. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And you feel immediately shame, like Ashley's in a geography class and everyone is telling the professor, okay, I'm this is that city, that this statue is in this city, blah blah blah, and everyone is doing their job and answering the questions, but Ashley feels ashamed for not being able to know these questions. So it's not the class is making her feel ashamed, she's believing a lie about herself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think you have to address that lie that you're believing.
I like that statement better than the second point Ashley made, because to forgive yourself implies that you were the problem.
Yeah.
And shame is not always your problem. Shame is an emotion and a feeling that usually comes from other people.
I think you're missing what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that with shame, you take on things and beliefs about who you are that are not true. But you have automatically made the assumption that you are a bad person.
Well, it's believing a lie.
Yeah, you're believing a lie.
If you're believing a lie, that's nothing you have to forgive yourself for. I think that's just the
think
wrong...
about this. Think about this. Can you think of something that you are ashamed of that doesn't have to do with something that you did or something that, because yes, I mean, it is a lie, but you have to forgive yourself for even believing the lie about yourself to begin with. That's what I'm saying. Like, you have to.
I don't know if I would call it forgiving, though.
Yeah, I think forgiving's the wrong word, because
Like, I think you have to.
I think
Help me,
loving
Rachel.
yourself and self-empathy for yourself is, but that's not the word I'm
Maybe
looking
practicing self-compassion.
for. Yes, there
Yeah.
you go.
Practicing self-compassion, it's kind of an acknowledgement of, you know, here's the shame, here's what I'm being told, and here's how we move forward. By the way, that's not, you know, what is real and that's how I think of it. And honestly, this is me being gray again, but that's just how I feel. I feel like it's different things for different people. Like for me, I'm a very introverted person, and when I'm in that kind of a crap show, it's all very mental. I'm not saying anything. So that's generally for me what needs to happen is I need to start talking about it. And I need to call attention to it verbally, which normally means I have to talk to my poor husband about it. But by that time, he normally sees that something's going on and is asking me about it to begin with. But normally talking to somebody about it and calling acknowledgement to what you're feeling and what's going on in your head. But that's just me. It could be different things for different people.
All right, y'all, just 86 the whole forgiving yourself.
No,
Just don't
no,
forgive
no.
yourself.
I get
if that
what you're
helps
saying.
you,
If that helps you, yeah. I think that guilt is a cognitive reaction to the breach of a learned value. And, you know, it requires thought and action, whereas shame is more raw, and it typically doesn't involve cognitive, like logical thinking or reasoning. It's an automatic stress response that hijacks the brain in that moment. And that's how it feels. It feels very instant, and you're hijacked.
I remember though, like I always felt like growing up guilty for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
I cannot tell you how many times I was baptized because I figured out I was not a Christian.
That's shame. That's not guilt.
Maybe, but I felt guilty for things I had done wrong. Like what I believed I had done wrong and that I believed I needed forgiveness for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know though. I think that I guess you could talk about this all day because they are similar, but they're very different because you were believing that what you were doing, like not just your actions, but like who you were bad,
Well, yes, I believed that,
which to me is shame.
well, we had this mixed, belief of, it was almost like there were a lot of people who believed that you could not lose your salvation. I remember, I think Robert believed that, right?
Yeah.
He believed that you could not lose your salvation, but there was this constant talk of you, like, you're sinning. You are constantly sinning. You constantly need forgiveness. You need all of this. And so it makes one feel guilt. It, like, there's this tally mark system. Oh, I lied today. Check. I did this. Check. And all of these sins can amount to, oh, well, maybe I wasn't ever really a Christian. And so I need the ultimate forgiveness because I just keep messing up.
See, and to me, that's spiritual shame.
That's
Well, it's
bad-
spiritual abuse.
Yeah,
it's a form of
Yeah.
spiritual
and
abuse.
bad doctrine and
No, I'm
so
just saying for the
much-
sake of people being confused, because people really do confuse guilt with shame.
I know, and what I'm saying is like how we grew up.
Oh.
That was a way to invoke guilt and
Yeah.
a way to invoke shame.
Well, and it was a way to invoke control.
Yes, that too. Because if you can control all of these kids and these people to constantly just, I don't know what the end goal was of all that. I would love to know what the end goal,
Control.
but control for why? Like, why do you need to feel like you can control people like that? I don't get it. I know that's a different topic, but am I the only one who experienced that within the church?
No.
No, I just
How many times were y'all baptized?
I felt guilty for waking up in the morning. And I've, like, in a comical kind of fashion, have referred to myself as a misplaced Catholic. Because I'm sorry for everything. I feel guilty for everything. But when I joke about it, I had a friend that I joked about that too, and they were like, "Well, wasn't your dad brought up as a Roman Catholic?" And I was like, "Oh,
yeah.
Well, I will say though, I've
Oh.
met many Catholics.
that's true. I'm not I'm not
who are
poo-pooing
not,
on you being Catholic."
and some are the most, like, they're the most gracious people I've ever met.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't
And
mean that.
So I think it's the person. Maybe, I don't know. I want to dig deeper into that. But
I do know. I thought this was interesting, and this is a sidebar. Have any of you guys watched Pinocchio, the cartoon?
I hate that.
like the movie,
Cartoon.
Yeah, the cartoon Pinocchio.
like the
Yeah.
Walt Disney classic.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
That was an Italian folklore.
Yes.
Did you guys know about that?
Yes.
The whole thing was created to get kids to obey their parents. The whole land where they turn into donkeys because they don't. That was a fear tactic that was created by a newspaper in Italy to get children to obey their parents. That creeped me out
Oh,
when
no.
I read about that.
You should, I mean, so many folklores, so many stories were created to abuse children, to control them.
There's
I mean,
also a sex trafficking aspect of that too. from
that
Pinocchio.
yeah, that it just creeped me out when I heard about that for the first time. I was like, ew, that's weird.
like the what's the German Krupp the guy who steals children if they're bad.
Oh, the Pied Piper.
No, I'm talking like dark, like almost like Santa Claus.
Oh,
Because Krampus, yeah, or Krampus, I don't know.
I think of Dwight Schrute. Are you impish or are you?
yeah, and I mean that was a way to control kids as well. Santa Claus,
Well,
I don't know. So
Is there anything else y'all want to talk about with shame and
how?
guilt?
Okay, I think the best way for you to recognize shame.
Oh, hold on.
Oh,
I
God.
just remembered my
Okay.
third step.
No.
Okay,
I
my,
liked
my
your first two, by the way.
Thank
I thought
you.
I thought they were good.
Thank you. Okay, no, the third step. Rats.
Oh, Lord.
Hold on. No, I just had it. Oh, the third step is to talk about it. You release shame by talking about whatever it is that makes you ashamed. I did not say that. Brooke, why are you laughing at
I
me?
was laughing at Rachel's
Lord have
face.
mercy.
I was like thinking it was gonna
Be
I think as adults, you know, we believe this. This is what I think we can do to help us work through shame.
With my 3 steps.
No,
yes.
is, you know, if you're constantly in a state of like, this negative self-talk, maybe make a timeline. I don't know. Maybe journal and, okay, what are some of your first core memories? Okay, what was one of your first core memories as a child?
Yeah, trauma timelines are very helpful.
And then maybe see if there's a pattern there. Oh, well, I feel shame this way. What, Ashley?
These were in my 3 steps.
No, I did not hear a timeline in your 3 steps.
I said you need to identify your shame and figure out where it comes
And
from.
I'm giving tangible, like identify.
Examples
Okay, that's great.
Of how to work.
Here's
through
a
it.
tangible way of how you can maybe work through it. Okay, I felt ashamed of my gender at the age of 5, or for me, it was the age of 10 or 11. And I felt ashamed of my body.
But we've been giving examples.
I know, I'm saying for the person who wants to work through their shame and maybe work through how they're, like, why they're feeling just this constant negativity about themselves. Does that not make sense to
No,
anyone?
I
no.
see what you're saying.
Ashley's looking at me like I'm talking Greek here. Well,
No, I get it. She's trying to give examples of how people can work through. And
is it just because we didn't take to your forgiving yourself
Yes.
and you're kind of
And my
sour?
3 steps.
Okay, Ashley, did that make you feel shame?
No, it made me feel mad.
Okay. But then, like, I do think with guilt, you can also figure out, I don't know, like, how can you figure out, maybe ask those questions. Okay, am I feeling guilty for something that I did something wrong, or is it shame? I don't know. Can y'all?
Ooh, hey.
I feel
have
like
an
we've
idea.
talked a lot about shame.
I have an idea. If our listeners feel okay with doing this, how about when this episode drops, if people want to maybe drop a couple of comments about maybe what they've dealt with
Yeah,
shame?
yeah. Because
Sometimes that helps just getting it out in the open.
yeah,
You know, this is a funny thing that has been a source of shame in the past. I have 2 really, really, really big fears in life. Maybe you could post those 2 fears that bring you shame. My 2 fears are snakes. and sinkholes.
snakes and eagles.
Snakes and
Eagles.
sinkholes.
Oh, sinkholes.
Sinkholes. Yes.
Like a
Snakes and
kitchen
sinkholes.
sink.
No,
No,
like
no.
sinkholes, like you're in Florida and all of a sudden your house gets swallowed up by a sinkhole and you die in a great big pit of hell.
To be fair, it was a real thing in all the movies.
It's a very real
we really
thing.
thought that was
It's
going
a
to
very
be an
real
everyday
thing.
experience.
But is it?
But talking
How is
about
that
it,
shameful?
because when I talk about it, it used to be really embarrassing to me that
Oh.
I thought constantly about snakes and sinkholes. And it's funny. My
SS.
best friend, you can ask my best friend, what's Rachel's 2 biggest fears? And she'll go snakes and sinkholes. She knows. But for the longest time, I wouldn't talk about it. And it was, so maybe drop a comment. Just to maybe it will help get it out into the open. And we'll think positively about you and give you good vibes
And
about your comments.
I think another thing, just echoing what Brooke said at the beginning of the episode, is that with shame, there's secrecy. And so keep that in mind. But the more that you talk about it, you're normalizing it because you're not the only one who is dealing with what you're dealing with.
Maybe talk about it to safe people. Like
Yeah.
if you live with your
Yes.
parents and
Don't
your
go to your
parents are the
parent.
main source of your shame in your childhood, don't go to them, especially if they haven't.
I don't know. Maybe
Ask-
more parents need that kind of combative.
No, but I'm saying if
Like,
they
hey,
haven't
guess what, Mom,
changed,
Dad?
if they haven't changed and asked for forgiveness and tried to like help repair what they destroyed, don't go to them. It's not going to help until you're healthy enough to be like, hey, yo, here's what you did. And I'd like to talk about
I am
this.
ashamed of you as my parents.
No, don't say that.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to the Lies We Love podcast. Have a good one, and we love you.